Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gregory Saxton. I'm CloudFrame CTO. Today's webinar is on COBOL cross-compile or relief for mainframe cost increases. 5%. You could read that. Yeah, raise your hand if your salary will be 28% higher in 5 years. Your mainframe monthly lease charges will. So a question for you. Any guess where your employer might find that money? I think about enterprise software licensing and why it's so difficult to understand, what your costs will be. We made this simple at CloudFrame. But when I look at pricing and not just on the mainframe, just in general, I feel like it's playing a casino game where the rules keep changing. Like, how do you win? Which is why I don't gamble, but I do help mainframe customers improve their game. Let's talk about how. Cross compile. So every epic tale needs a hero and a villain. Today's heroes will be played by cross compilers, and we'll gently talk about transpilers. Might be new terms for people, might not be. So what is cross compile? Well, if compile converts from a human readable language to a lower level instruction set for hardware, well, then what is a cross compiler doing? Cross compiler converts a human readable language to an instruction set or bytecode for a different platform. If you think about it, you experience things that come out of cross compilers all the time. The apps on your mobile phone. People aren't programming on a mobile phone. They're programming on a Windows or Linux or Mac computer, and then they cross compile and push that code out to a mobile device. And when they're happy with it, they push it into their respective app store. CloudFrame has a product named Relocate. CloudFrame Relocate is a cross compiler. CloudFrame Relocate lets customers who have COBOL workloads keep their source code in COBOL, but run it as Java. We'll talk a little more about that in a couple minutes. I mentioned this other term, transpiler. What is a transpiler? It's a tool that takes the source code of a program written in one language, and it produces source code that will effectively produce functionally equivalent results in another language. These have been around for years, a long time, and we'll get into that. So does CloudFrame have a transpiler? The answer is yes. CloudFrame Renovate is our other product. And CloudFrame Renovate is for customers who are looking for a way to modernize a system. They're looking for a refactor, re-architect solution. And they're thinking, hey, I've got decades old trusted business logic in there. Do I have to start from scratch? We talk about CloudFrame Renovate in other webinars. If you go to our YouTube channel, you can find a webinar on building a modernization pilot success plan. If you're interested in Renovate, I'd encourage you to just spend a couple minutes watching that video. So no cross.
Greg, back to
Oh, sorry, David.
Yeah, I had a question real quick, and maybe you're going to get to it here. And I see it right now. Is where does the cross compiled code go once I'm finished with it? And maybe you're going to get to that, and I just jumped the gun here a little bit. But please go ahead, and maybe you can answer that question.
Yeah. So in the case of CloudFrame, right, your cross-compiled code, CloudFrame Relocate we're talking about, your cross-compiled code is effectively, JVM class files and jars. So they're designed to run inside the JVM. CloudFrame Relocate as a tool, is integrated with your mainframe build system so that whenever, a developer is packaging up changes and wants to test them and eventually start promoting those towards production, The same controlled process that's used for moving your COBOL system into higher level environments, eventually to production, is used to integrate with CloudFrame Relocate, effectively making the Java bytecodes available to execute on the JVM as opposed to executing the COBOL load module. We'll talk about why that's advantageous. This isn't just a science project, so we'll get to the punchline shortly.
Okay.
So the power of the JVM. No, we're not here to say one language is good and another is evil. But what we are here to talk about is by using CloudFrame Relocate, you're able to shift compute to any cloud platform. That's something that you can't easily do today. You can't just take a mainframe kicks transaction or batch job, have it launched from your job scheduler on the mainframe, but have it run out in your favorite cloud platform like AWS, Azure, or GCP, or others. CloudFrame Relocate lets you do that. The other thing that CloudFrame Relocate lets you do is, and this is really cool, about 25 years ago, IBM put a strategy in place to have the mainframes be a viable platform for Java development. And viable meant a couple things. It meant they needed to have a JVM. It meant that they needed to have it be highly performant. It meant that they needed to have other Unix system services available. It also meant that Java had to be able to run as fast as COBOL. And wait for it, why would you do Java development on the mainframe if it costs so much more to run there? So they created a way for customers to run Java on the mainframe and have it be, about the same price, or wait for it, less than running it on Linux or Windows, depending on the workload. And the way they do that is they introduced a processor called the ZIP, ZIIP, the ZIP engine. And Java code on ZOS is zip eligible. And what that means is code running on the zip engine, and this is getting back to the casino I talked about earlier, code running on the zip engine is not subject to MSU or MLC charges. What are those charges? Very simply, those are two charges that come from IBM and its partners if you're running their software on a monthly basis. MSU is very simply the cost of compute. MLC is the monthly lease charge, and the monthly lease charge is calculated by how much MSU you consume. So how do you win at the casino? Use less MSU. If you run COBOL in the JVM as Java, you don't consume billable MSU because it's running on the JVM. That is about the fastest path, lowest risk opportunity to lower the cost of mainframe compute. So there are, depending on where you look, Gartner, Amazon, Azure, I'm sure Google has a point of view, consultancies, Deloitte, Accenture. There's different modernization options. There could be 5, there could be 7. People call them the 5 R's, the 6 R's. Here we have 7 with encapsulate. Looks like Gartner added another one. And what's interesting about this is if you think about CloudFrame Relocate for your COBOL workloads, that you're going to keep them in COBOL, at least, for the foreseeable future. Relocate enables you to immediately and easily rehost and replatform COBOL compute to most any JVM without changing a single line of source code in your COBOL programs and without requiring any changes to your data. With CloudFrame Relocate, you could run on the mainframe on the zip engine. You could run on any cloud platform. You could run it on your iMac with connectivity, and you could read and write data on the mainframe. You could call programs on the mainframe. Think about the power of that. With CloudFrame Renovate, and I mentioned, we don't go deep on Renovate today, but with Renovate, we give you the ability to refactor and re-architect to cloud native Spring Boot code, Spring Boot Java, Spring Batch Java. And it allows you to retire your COBOL source code. And like Relocate, we provide backwards compatibility to your mainframe data. Think about that. Think about being able to lower the cost of compute immediately. And then as you think about modernization and you have systems that you say, gee, I'd like to rewrite these in a modern language. I'd like to move them to a different platform. If you had an incremental way of doing that, that didn't make you start from scratch and make sure you get all of the business requirements correct and correctly implement all of the business rules and retest all those calculations, particularly because usually when you move to another platform, you have to change your data to a Unicode ASCII. Those are big, bang, long, risky, career ending projects. Why not just break those into winnable sequences and span them over time? To me, the benefits of cross compile are as simple as this question. Does your employer like to waste money? I'm not talking about pocket change. I'm talking about millions, tens of millions of dollars annually. I mean, I do. If they do, like DM me on LinkedIn. I mean, I'll take a look at the jobs. Maybe they'll pay me $1 million a year. I'm guessing they don't like wasting money. I haven't met an enterprise customer that likes wasting money. That's the answer. The immediate benefit of cross compile is you reduce costs with an incremental approach. It's fast, it's low risk. Absolute best candidates for cross compile right there in front of you. Why is that? When we talk to customers, everybody wants to kick the tires when they talk to a vendor. Do you support batch? Do you support DB2? Do you support vSAN? Do you support QSAM? Do you support GDGs? What about CICS? Do you support background transactions? Do you support 3270? Do you integrate with MQ? What about DB2 stored procedures? Yes, 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 yes. Put a check in all the boxes. But why are these the best candidates? What we have found with every customer we've worked with is the call to action is around reducing batch MIPS consumption. That seems to be where everybody has the biggest challenge. After that challenge appears to be a solvable problem, when people understand the art of the possible with CloudFrame Relocate, then they start looking at, wow, what else could we point this solution at? Where else could we save money? How else can you help us? And then we start talking about CICS. We talk about MQ. Boy, we have a customer that they saved a ton of money with MQ and CloudFrame Relocate. So project considerations. This is always an interesting topic. I talk about this extensively. There's an entire webinar dedicated to the topic on our YouTube channel. I'm not going to recap all of this here, but you'll find something around, building your pilot modernization success plan. I think I mentioned that earlier. I encourage you to just go through that. I think you'll find a lot of the topics resonate. The, the two thoughts that I would leave you with as you consider a project is you're looking for the sweet spot between too small to be irrelevant and too large to be successful. If you've ever heard the folks who come from the product management side of Agile or Agile PMOs, they talk about minimum viable XYZ, minimum viable product, minimum viable feature, minimum viable change, minimum viable something, right? What's the least amount of cost savings that you could try to achieve on some monthly or annual basis that will build fans in your leadership team and create a call to action to say, hey, we got this, we can do this. And then ask the question, what are you waiting for? Right? Time is of the essence. I say this every single webinar. Time takes everybody out. Time is undefeated. If you are in an organization that has a 10-year plan to solve your mainframe problem, and you've been there a few years, and you notice every 1, 2, 3 years there's a new 10-year plan, might be time to think about CloudFrame Relocate. So I've mentioned CloudFrame Relocate. So let's talk about it. What is it? It's software. It's a tool, right? There's lots of tools in the marketplace. What's different? It's a tool that empowers you with a new approach, an approach that 100% of our customers are succeeding by using. 100%. Compare that to the 74% industry statistic of a failure ratio for cost reduction and modernization projects. If you are going to undertake something as risky and controversial as cost savings and modernization, ask yourself which camp you want to be in. Do you want to be in the camp that wins 26% of the time? Or do you want to be in the camp that's winning 100% of the time? I'm a fan of certainty of outcome. I like to win. I'm going with the 100% of the time solution. Great case study. I could do a whole webinar on this case study. So let me set the scene. Here's a telecom company with a mandate from the CEO to get off the mainframe. I worked in a company like that at one point in my career. We happened to bump into a team, interestingly enough, on a system that I helped build earlier in my career back in the early 1990s. The system is classified to be retired. They have a greenfield approach for the successor system. Problem is they need to reduce costs. They're a couple years into the rewrite, and there's a pattern. Everybody's got to show cost reduction every year. Building a greenfield system takes time. There's scope risk. There's just lots of challenges starting from scratch. So how do you solve the problem? Well, the easiest way to solve the problem in management is to lay off more employees and outsource more work. That has the challenge of now adding more risk to the rewrite, because the people that have literally been there, some of them I worked with in the early 90s, are the people who actually understand. They're the people who are your experts on this system. And it's not the COBOL system, it's all the business rules and all the reasons things changed over the year, because they've been there all that time. So they used CloudFrame Relocate. They did a proof of concept with us. And in 3 months, they had installed it, did a feasibility assessment of shifting compute off the mainframe out to AWS. They demonstrated by doing that just in their development environments, they would reduce their costs $2 million a year on the mainframe. They licensed us, they put it in production within the next 3 months. Think about that. Feasibility to business case in 3 months, business case to production deployment in 6 months. They're saving over $4 million a year. They've adopted us in other parts of this system and other areas of the company. They're now in year 3. The rewrite is still not done. Think about that. It's so easy to ignore systems that you want to retire and you have a solution for, and you think that it's just going to go away. Why waste money? I think we all agreed our employers don't like to waste money. I said this earlier, but let me recap. CloudFrame Relocate requires no changes to your COBOL code or data or your job scheduler. You install our product, you integrate it with your build system, and voila, you have the ability to run your COBOL programs in the JVM. This is literally an opportunity to invest dimes to save dollars. Let me say that again. You can literally invest dimes to save dollars. There's no risk here. We guarantee identical results. If you're a mainframer, you know what Super C is. You could take and run a program, run it in COBOL and save the outputs, run it through CloudFrame and save the outputs, compare those files in Super C, and you will have identical results. Have you ever tested a system easier than that? That is how you can get this in production in 6 months. So I've led modernization programs that decommission mainframes. It's a years long journey. Think decade for most people that are on this call today. If you're running 70, 90,000, 100,000, 200,000 MIPS, you're talking at least a decade. Why wouldn't you start with cost savings? It makes the journey so much easier when you are not dealing with the challenges of a business environment that did not unfold the way the executive team expected. Think about the disruption that we have faced the last 2 years. Do you think this is the last time something like this will happen? Think back to 08 with the financial meltdown. Think back to 2001. There's never a reason not to take action to save your company a lot of money when it's as simple as installing a piece of software and not changing anything else. I'll pause there for questions, David.
I think we have one, Greg. Let me just look real quick. We do have a question, and maybe you can answer this. We have a question that's related to online systems, and I assume at this point we're talking CICS, that type of user interaction versus batch. So maybe you could put that in perspective for us, or tell us where we are on the roadmap for that.
Sure. Yep. I was a CICS geek in my career, and this is a topic I'm really passionate about. So with CICS, I'll sort of describe the code that runs there as I'm going to really oversimplify this. You have code in CICS that is designed to interact with a dumb terminal, a 3270 display. And then you have code in CICS that is designed to be called as a subprogram. It might be called by a program that is interacting with 3270. It might be called through middleware coming from another platform like web, desktop, mobile, that's going through different gateways eventually into the internet to access that program. As a real common way of developing distributed systems dating back to the late 80s, 1990s, and it's still prevalent today. CloudFrame supports modernizing, or using Relocate with both of those designs. With the sub-program design, that's the simplest approach. You can use CloudFrame Relocate, you could use CloudFrame Renovate and completely move it over to Java. You could run it on the mainframe under a Liberty profile. You could deploy it off the mainframe. It's a Spring Boot service. The 3270 application, now that can also run under Relocate. There's some gotchas there, the devil's in the details, because there's lots of things when you're running on the mainframe in CICS where we're still integrating with CICS. So you're going back and forth between the JVM and CICS on the main processor. If you're looking to renovate a 3270 transaction, I think you'll appreciate this. A lot of other tools on the market, they take your BMS map and they generate some type of a user interface. In my experience, people already have these. So the way our tool works is we take that 3270 application and we just convert it into a REST service. And what we've done is we follow the flow of control and data flow of your map through your procedure division. And we turn those data flows for your map into RESTful messages. Odds are, if somebody has code that's 3270, not everyone, because there's no such thing as every, all and none, but odds are there is a system, desktop, web, mobile, that is screen scraping that. So no one really wants that 3270 interface. There was just never a reason to change it. So we built lots of scaffolding with different middleware over the years, and it's really brittle code. The opportunity to just get rid of all that and have your middle tier connect to a REST endpoint in a modern language is where we're taking our customers.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate you answering that. I think we have a follow up on that discussion about. I'll read it because I'm the marketing guy here, not the technical guy. Um, how are you going to handle TSQ, TDQ?
So if you are using Relocate, we can, we have a couple ways of doing that. There's the simplest thing is we could use JKIX and we can just integrate with CICS that way. JKIX is IBM's CICS Java wrapper. So everything that's available through like exec-kix and COBOL is available to Java. The other thing that you can do is if you're running under a Liberty profile, there's, you can use WOLA calls and call a new program or some program to read those queues. Now, if you're going the path of renovate and you're just moving your code to Java, then CloudFrame provides within that Spring Boot application, we provide emulation of things like TS and TD queues. And this is where the conversation goes into the devil's in the details with how you're going to compose your microservices and which ones need access to interact with the different queues. But what I will tell you is it's a solvable problem.
Right. So I think the answer there is that it's not necessarily a product question, but necessarily an architectural question about how you're going to address the entire application.
Uh, yes, a lot. These are great questions. These are it depends questions.
All right, we're getting to the bottom of the hour, and I want to get one more question in. Um, does Relocate help reduce DB2 workloads?
So what Relocate does is when you're running your code in the JVM, Relocate has the ability to run the same static SQL that your COBOL program did. There's no rebind required. We do that by using JDBC through a type 4 driver. Using a type 4 JDBC driver uses the DB2 DDF interface. When you take that path to DB2, all of the work in DB2 is zip eligible. So it doesn't change the volume of work. The same work still needs to be done by DB2. It does change what you pay for that work because now that DBRM is zip eligible and as much as possible will run on the zip engine. Like that's something IBM controls. We see the range of 40% zip offload by DB2. So, it's another one where mileage varies based on use cases. Updates are less eligible than reads.
Hmm, okay.
Yeah, good question.
Well, I'd like to thank everybody that submitted questions and attended the webinar today. Greatly